We're going to talk about UFC 309 a little bit still coming out of it because the rankings came out last week. All right. They came out this past week. Okay. And if you have been watching on MMA Junkie's YouTube channel, we did do a live debate about the rankings, specifically with regard to Jon Jones and whether or not Jon Jones, where he should be ranked. On the MMA Junkie pound for pound rankings, just FYI, if you're unaware, he is officially number one in our MMA Junkie pound for pound rankings, much to the chagrin of this guy. So, Goze, we're going to do this one more time, dude. There is no way Jon Jones should be pound for pound number one.
Okay. Here's what
overreaction, yes or no?
Oh, it is an overreaction. And I'm going to tell you why. After our conversation, I really did try and put myself in your guys' shoes. And I think what we came down to was we just all have different criteria. I posed the question to George on MMA Junkie Radio last night. I said, look, if we're at this point, who in this industry could we pull in, even with the history of boxing, we'll say, because it is combat sports, whose opinion would we just say, hey, what do you think is the criteria for pound, and we would all accept it? Because if we take your criteria, you, Matt Wells, I would agree. If you take recency out, I'm with you guys. But if you, but see, there's just so much up and down.
Let me just ask
kind of fun about it, though. That's what's fun about it is.
It is, but here's what I'm asking though: why isn't recency at the top of your criteria? We're talking about rankings. Rankings is what have you done for me lately? If you were to look at, say, like college football rankings, and let's just say USC beat somebody early in the season, they beat the number one team in the nation to be number one, and they go on a run for 7 weeks. And then in week 9, they lose to a sub 500 unranked team. You don't then go, oh, but they got that team again. They got that win against the number one team at the time 9 weeks ago. They're going to fall out of the top spot. Why doesn't it work that way for our rankings?
Because I think at the end of the day, you look at pound for pound as a division, and we look at pound for pound as a list. They already have their divisions and what they do, and that's where recency does matter, right? But they're so special, this elite group. And I like to say it's usually 3, because anything past 3, I think is just a really good fighter. But we're talking about greatness. Yep. Anything past that, that's why we have to talk about pound for pound. So really,
for the sake of it, and just for the sake of it, Goze, we're talking about Jon Jones, who's number 1 in our pound for pound. Alex Pereira is number 2. Islam is number 3. Ilia Topuria is number 4. I just want people to know what we're talking about here in terms of fighters and resumes. So go ahead.
So when we talk about those people, the reason we're even having the conversation is their incredible resume where they normally reside, right? That is the bulk of what we're talking about. Now we're talking about, well, what if they went on and did something else? And that's where you can take 2 people on that list and you could say, well, they have done that. We have something to kind of go off of. All right. Now we're talking about Alex Pereira and we're talking about Jon Jones. We have the luxury that they're actually somewhat close to each other, right? They've fought in the same division at one point. So you could even say, all right, well, what if they just fought? How would you even see? Like, there's so many things that you could kind of factor into that decision. So I feel like a lot of people look at it as like a division and you have to stay current. I think we're past that. We look at everything they've done and then we just add the cherry on top. Well, where did they push themselves and what did that look like? First fight with Ciryl Gane, I think we all could kind of say, there's not enough there. We need a little bit more. I agree, because I was on that side. Once we saw what he did to Stipe, you can kind of say, not only can this guy survive in this division, he's pretty damn good. Okay, now you can poke holes, of course, and we can do that on the other side. But I think that's what it comes down to, man, is that I feel like maybe you guys look at it as a division. We look at it as a list.
Yeah, that's interesting to me that you are essentially, and maybe I'm wrong, but essentially it almost feels like you're putting more weight on the win over Stipe than the win over Ciryl Gane. Because for me, I was quite all right with Jon Jones being number 1 pound for pound after he beat Ciryl Gane. I was okay with that, and that's where he was. And then there was 20 months of inactivity after that, and that's where we get into an issue for me with Jon being number one, is because I look at Alex Pereira also, like you said, moving up a division, winning being 5-0 at the light heavyweight division, a former middleweight champion, light heavyweight. He's 5-0 now in that division. 4 of those are title. You know, 3 of those wins are against former champions. It not count more than Jones coming back and just beating Stipe, who we admittedly we're not going to question that he looked like a shell of himself, that he was older and washed. You know, we're not really going to debate that. So how does that? That's where, like, I'm not going back to the Ciryl Gane fight. I'm not going back to Jon Jones 5 years ago. Just going off of what Alex has done in the same time span as when Jon Jones got back into it, 20 months. I don't know. I just don't think that there's really comparable. I don't see how Alex is not number one. That's where I stand.
I kind of see a little bit of Stipe's matchup is the way I see for Alex Pereira fighting Khalil Roundtree, right? It's a guy that nobody was really calling for his name. He's probably not tip top, but that's where, we talk about a little bit of fantasy land that we have to live in, because that's kind of what pound for pound can be at times. I end up at a point where I go, okay, there's good things being said on this side, there's good things on that side. I do lean towards Jon Jones, but then I even think, well, all right, what if they just fought? What if they fought at light heavyweight? One was a middleweight, right? He eventually moved up to light heavyweight. They both, Jon Jones made a career at light heavyweight. What happened if they fought? What would our staff picks look like? And I feel like a lot of us would throw Jon Jones as the name that would come out victorious there. And so there's even scores a point for me a little bit in my thought process.
Interesting. All right. Well, listen, I try to deal with results. I don't get too much into hypothetical, but I understand if you put a lot of emphasis on the hypothetical, then I understand why you've reached the conclusion that Jon Jones is number one. But all right, that's the last time we'll talk about it. Things are going to happen over the course of.
I love it. I love it when you guys.
I love it too. The things are going to happen over the course of the next several months, and we'll get a shakeup, and we'll see how this thing plays out.